So moving on, section 21 notice, a little bit of a nicer, easier notice to use. So this is what I call kind of like the non-default notice. So this is used when you just want to gain possession, but your tenant hasn't done anything wrong. So one of the most common scenarios might be you want to sell. You've been a landlord and now you wish to sell the property. So you need to give the tenant the required notice to obtain possession of your property to allow you to market it for sale. You'd use a section 21 notice. Huge changes have happened to the section 21 notice. And Sally touched on it earlier with the Deregulation Act. So since the 1st of October 2015, massive changes have taken place. And I haven't got time to go through them all with you, but I'm going to cover some of the key points here. 2 months notice has to be given, and it has to be 2 clear months notice. So 2 full months notice, minimum. You must remember to allow the time for service. 2 days if it's by post, working days, 1 working day if delivered before 4 p.m, hand delivered. You can give more than 2 months notice. So for example, you could give 2 months and a week, or you could give 3 months notice. But be careful, because with the changes, what they've done is they've put an expiry date on a section 21 notice. It's now only valid for court action for 6 months. That's 6 months from the date of service, not 6 months from the date of expiry. So by the time the notice has expired, yeah, Farhan's smiling at me because we were talking about this today. Once that notice has expired, you as the landlord have only really got 4 months to act, because 2 months have already passed, which is the notice period you've given to the tenant. 4 months to make an application to court for that possession order to be invoked. So they've really restricted this now, whereas prior to this, the longest known section 21 that was successfully acted upon was issued 6 years before they went for possession. Now, do you think it's fair if you serve a notice on somebody and I say, I would like the property back in 2 months' time, but I don't take action for 6 years? It's a bit contradictory, isn't it? Because I've allowed you to stay now for another 6 years. So I do understand their reasonings, but this is catching many people out. Many people. I had to, because my job, operations director, go in and change every single process that we have to ensure we comply with this. And one did slip through the net when it first came out, and one of my property managers, who's no longer with me, served a section 21 notice 3 days too early, because you cannot serve it until the first 4 months have now passed, and the section 21 notice was void. So after the 2 months had passed, we had to serve another one and wait another 2 months. So as you can see, this is really important that we get it right. It's now a prescribed form. There are still 2 others still in use. But for me, we just use Form 6A now, because if I said to the staff, right, you've either got to use this one dependent on that, this one dependent on that, and this one dependent on that, there's a chance they might get it wrong. So we've just said we use Form 6A, and what we do is we make sure before we serve that notice, if we haven't already, because they moved in pre-October 2015, we will send to them a copy of the gas cert, a copy of the how to rent guide, copy of the deposit certificate, a copy of the licence, and a copy of the EPC. Everything that they need in order to make that notice valid. If you haven't done all of that, I'm sorry, but you can't use this form and you cannot serve notice. Please do not fall foul to this. And this will apply with the EPCs that Sally talked about earlier if they're not compliant and at the right grade. Sally mentioned that 1st of April, we can't enter a new tenancy, so we can't move a new person into a property, and we cannot renew a tenancy if the grade is not E or above. But come 2020, we cannot let the property, or your tenant can't live in the property if it's not an E or above. So we've got 2 years to get our stuff in order. Please start now, because those 2 years will come round so quickly, and there will be a lot more legislation changes that you're going to have to keep up with. So that's something that's quite simple. Anybody here not looked at an EPC? Because I don't really think they're much use, if I'm honest. On an EPC, if you go on to, I think it's about page 3, it actually gives you recommendations on how to get from your current to your potential, and it will give you based on cost as well. So for example, if you install energy light bulbs, cost will be about £60 to £80, it will help. If you install a new boiler, cost will be 1,500 to 2.5 grand, but it will help. Look at the recommendations to see what you can do that's cheaper first to see if that helps, but start working on that now. Any questions on Section 21 notice? Section 21 notice, the great thing about this as well is that there's not a need to go to court at the expiry date of it. So with Section 8, remember I said you've got to wait 4 to 6 weeks for a court date? With this notice, once it's expired, if the tenant still remains in the property, you do what's called an accelerated possession claim. It's an online claim, or it's a form that you send off to the court and it says, I've complied with all of the rules, the tenant hasn't moved out on the date that the Section 21 notice expires, please grant me possession. And what they will normally do, if the tenant doesn't defend it, I'm going back to make sure you're doing your repairs, make sure we're doing our repairs, because if they put in a defence, you do then have to go to court. There will be a court date set. But if they don't defend, what will happen is you'll just get through the post a possession order giving you the information as to what date your tenant needs to be out. Good, yeah? But bear in mind, sometimes judges get it wrong. Our lovely judge in Wolverhampton actually got one of them wrong because of the legislation changes I was saying to this lady here earlier. This is what we do, eat, sleep and breathe lettings. And what I do is eat, sleep and breathe legislation. Because it's my job, it's what I do, it's what I'm passionate about, it's what I love. That's what I do every single day. A judge at 10 o'clock in the morning might be dealing with an adoption case, a family civil matter. You know, they deal with various different things every day. They don't just deal with housing. So I like to stand here and say, actually, I know more than the judge. And in this case, I did. And he'd sent back, instead of a possession order, he delivered us a struck out of court because you've served it incorrectly. Actually, I hadn't. He just wasn't up to date with the regulations, and we wrote him a nice letter to say, please, Mr. Judge, could you reconsider your verdict based on X, Y, Z? And within a week, we didn't get a sorry, but we did get a possession order. So bear that in mind, guys. Even the legal professionals, the ones that are paid a lot more money than I am, still get it wrong because it's not what they do day to day. Any questions on Section 21 notice? Yes, sir.
Why would you go for a Section 8 when you go for Section 21 and not have to prove?
Because there's two reasons. If a tenant is in a fixed term, so let's say tenancy started January and it's a year's tenancy, so it won't expire until December or January of next year if we keep it simple. You can't serve a Section 21 to expire until the end of that fixed term. So let's say your tenancy started January, they paid their first month's rent, paid their second month's rent, paid their third month's rent. April comes, they don't pay you rent. May comes, they don't pay you rent. You can't use Section 21 notice because they're in a fixed term, and a Section 21 notice cannot expire before the end of a fixed term. It can only bring a tenancy to an end when it's had its fixed term. Section 8 notice can be used during the tenancy, and that's why the Section 21 is a non-default, because you've not done nothing wrong. I'm going to allow you to finish your contract, but I do need it back at the end. And that's why Section 8 can be used mid-tenancy, because you're doing something wrong. And I'm not going to allow you to stay for the remaining 8 months because you're not paying me. The second reason is as well, is that on a Section 8, when you go to court, you also look for a money judgment. So a judgment through the courts that says, Preet, Mr. Landlord, I hereby award you possession, and Preet, I hereby state that you are ordered to pay Mr. Landlord the amount of rent that is outstanding plus his court fee. And then you can pursue them for that money. If you go in on Section 21, because some landlords do prefer to use Section 21 if they can, just because they think it's a quicker process. If they're nearing the end of the fixed term, they will, but you won't get the money judgment. So it depends what's more important to you. Is it recovery? Because not many landlords always recover their losses, because if they haven't got any money or they haven't got a job or there's nowhere that you can do an attachment to earnings, you might be fighting a losing battle. So it might be quicker and more effective to use a Section 21. But I always think, we're landlords. You guys are sat here at 9 o'clock. You want to learn, you want best practice, you all want to share the same thing. Wouldn't it be great if Garth shared with you his experience of an awful tenant so that you didn't have to have him? That would be great if we did pursue them and we did get judgments against them to stop other landlords experiencing the same thing. Because what a lot of landlords don't do, they don't do that because they're like, thank God they're out. It's not my problem anymore. And what a lot of other landlords do is, let's say Garth's got a tenant and they're in horrendous rent arrears, and you come along and go, hi Garth, this Preet has just applied for a property through me. Would you mind giving her a reference? What's Garth going to say? She's fantastic. I'm really sorry to see her go. Oh, she's just had a baby, or she needs a bigger property, or whatever. She's bloody brilliant. But the fact of the matter is, he just wants rid of her. So she becomes your problem and not his. So as landlords, come on, go for the Section 8, get the money, do the judgments. Let's put these tenants on lists and let them have county court judgments for their failures so that other people don't suffer. Because wouldn't it be great if we had done a credit check on the tenant that you've just had that's got rent arrears, and actually showed that she'd done this 3 times before, because each one of those landlords had put a claim on her credit file, and when we run the credit check, it actually showed. Because landlords aren't doing that, the credit checks are clear. So just bear that in mind, guys. As landlords, it would be good to know and share with others if we know. We'd love to create a blacklist, like, don't go by that one. That's a terrible one. And a lot of the Facebook groups and things like that actually do that. Within their community, they create a little list, like, Garth might say to you, hey, have you seen that tenant? Have you had him before? No, he's all right. But when you're in big communities, you can do that. When you're within a Wolverhampton landlord group, for example, it's most likely that 2 of you might have experienced the same tenant. Make sense?